Okay, previously we had heard a speech claiming that the link between the MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and autism, a neurodevelopment disorder, is unproven. As I would like to claim that not only is it unproven, the assumption of a correlation between autism and vaccines is incorrect. To support this claim, I will refine the Dr. Wakefield fiasco, explain toxicity and helpfulness, vaccine toxicity and helpfulness, and speak on the neurological signs of autism. The previous speaker on the subject mentioned a trial that had taken place based on a medical journal published, which was later discredited, therefore bringing the trial to an end. This trial being the beginning of the correlation between autism and the MMR vaccine scare. In reality, in February 1998, a medical journal, The Lancet, published a scientific research paper written by laboratory researcher Dr. Andrew Wakefield. It was co-authored by a dozen other doctors, and it was reported on a case of 12 anonymous children with developmental disorders. They were admitted to a pediatric bowl in a hospital in London. Dr. Wakefield's studies showed a correlation between the MMR vaccine and regression autism in 3/4 of the children. However, after an investigation by the Sunday Times in 2004, it was discovered that Dr. Wakefield was paid $7,500,000 by Richard Barr of Boyer to create evidence in order to profit from an outbreak of an autism scare. His manipulation of patient data and misreport was deemed irresponsible in January 2010 by the General Medical Council, and The Lancet withdrew the journal. The journal, therefore, is the actual beginning of this false fear of children's vaccines, and it has been discredited for making the original issue moot. However, let's assume that the fact alone does not quell people's fears. Vaccines are controversial because one is voluntarily subjecting one's body to a virus, a bacteria, or allergen in the hope that they will not contract the disease and not get the full outbreak. A study done by Amy Shatner of the Department of Medicine at the University of Cambridge in August 2004 found that the number of reports on neurological disorders caused by the MMR vaccine is very small. Other than evidence for a form of MMR vaccine containing the Ureb strain, which is popularly used in poorer countries because it's less costly to bake and buy, has a tendency to cause aseptic meningitis, which, as described by the Dorland Medical Dictionary, is a reversible condition in which the layering in the brain becomes inflamed. Going back to Dr. Wakefield, his research supported 3 different doses or vaccines to immunize children against measles, mumps, and rubella. But there is no benefit to extending the immunization process for these 3 diseases because it increases the possibility of infection of any of the other 2 not immunized. The National Health Service says that pregnant women have the possibility of contracting rubella, and therefore the baby can contract congenital or prenatal rubella, and that can cause birth defects and mental disorders. However, the vaccine itself is not part of this because it's the lack of there. The previous speaker also mentioned the use of thimerosal and toxicity in vaccines, specifically the MMR vaccine, in correlation with autism. However, thimerosal is also not a culprit in leading to the autism due to MMR vaccines. The Food and Drug Association describes thimerosal as an organomercury compound used as an antiseptic and antifungal agent in multi-dose drugs or vaccines, and it's basically a preservative. The FDA states its toxicity is dangerous if inhaled, ingested, or soaked in through the skin. But when it's introduced to the body through the bloodstream or directly, it's degraded into ethylmercury and thiosalicate, which passes through the body way too fast for it to have any risks. A study by Thomas W. Clarkson Department of the Environmental Scientists in Rochester in 2002 found that most of the deaths of thimerosal occurred in the mid-'80s due to suicides, and the last ended in the mid-'80s. Also, thimerosal was voted Allergen of the Year by the American Contact Dermatitis Society, and its usefulness to allergic reactions. Finally, the previous speaker voted on environmental factors causing autism, when in reality autism was found to have a strong genetic background by Drs. Ardent, Dodgedale, and Rodier of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology in the University of Rochester Medical Center in 2004. And the first dose of MMR vaccine is administered at about the same time that autism is found in children around the age of 1. And this has absolutely no correlation, but is simply a coincidence. Children who show autism usually have a growth disorder in their brain, which makes receptors and nerves and also lobes in your brain, which cause memory of emotions and motor development and balance not quite normal. And this, the malformation of this cannot be made in a couple of months, but rather years, so there is no correlation. So not only is the original founder and the journal of the problem been discredited, the possibility of vaccines causing and not preventing the mental disorders is infinitely close to 0. Thank you.
All right. You occasionally signpost the claims that the advocate brought up, but the structure is not as consistent as it might be. I think one of the problems here is that the original proposition is a little problematic, and you kind of go at it in a different direction. Instead of challenging the inference that the advocate's making, you're going to say, in fact, the advocate just didn't prove the opposite position, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm not sure that this is even an argument so much as this is like a follow-up speech. If this was a debate, the advocate's the first affirmative speaker, you're the second affirmative speaker presenting a better case that there is no relationship existing here, and so you're basically making the same point. You're just trying to make it more forcefully than the advocate did. So I don't really think we've got much clash here. There are a couple of points where there's a little bit of confusion. $7,500,000. I just didn't know what that number meant. So there's some statistic or there's some factual data there about how much the doctor was paid by the attorney. You need to get that clearer and express it in a more straightforward way so that it enhances your credibility. I did like some of the presses that you had on issues. Sometimes, though, I thought we got involved in things that were a little bit confusing. Why we're talking about rubella in pregnant mothers in relationship to this particular subject was not clear. I thought I was getting a lot of context without a lot of clash. I thought it was presented pretty effectively, like I said, but not necessarily on the conflict issues. All right, thank you.